there is a huge unleveraged potential for more equitable participation in renewable energy policy making and implementation. Gender equality is a prerequisite and key driver for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Closing the gender gap in the energy sector is essential for a successful energy transition.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, dear panel. If you are a regular visitor to conferences like this one, or if you work in the energy sector, then I think it will come as no surprise to you that energy remains one of the least gender diverse sectors there is. Men outnumber women in key positions across all functions in this sector, whether technical, managerial, or policy related. The picture is slightly more balanced in renewables than it is elsewhere, yet women nonetheless remain underrepresented with just 32% of the jobs in green energy. Given that diversity has proven to be a key driver of innovation, closing the gender gap is crucial to the future vitality of the firms and the organizations working in this space, and therefore to the success of the energy transition as a whole. And it's crucial for another reason as well, and that's one that was just mentioned by our social media moderator. In societies where women run the household, as in many parts of the global south, it is they who bear the main burden when clean energy is scarce, which is why gender equality is so closely linked to achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in general and of SDG 7 in particular, which of course was the subject of a separate panel earlier this morning. So in this panel, we want to explore the main barriers to gender diversity in the energy sector, and we want to ask how we can bring them down. What kind of structural obstacles do women encounter? How many more girls and women can be attracted to renewable energy professions? What are the roles of the state and private sector in fostering gender mainstreaming? Those are some of the issues that we're going to address with a fantastic panel. And I will now introduce them, and I'm going to keep the introductions short in the interest of maximizing our time for discussion. It's a pleasure to welcome Artan Rizvanoli. She is the Minister of Economy for Kosovo. Great to have you with us. Monica Kathina Juma is Cabinet Secretary of the Ministry of Energy in the Republic of Kenya. Great to have you joining our panel. Sheila Oprah-Ocha is the Executive Director of the Energia International Network on Gender and Sustainable Energy. She's also co-chair of the UNDESA's Technical Advisory Group for SDG 7. A real honor to have you with us. Dan Dormer is head of the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat, a leading platform for international collaboration to accelerate clean energy transitions. He's also former head of international energy for the UK government. It's great to see you again, Dan. And it's a pleasure to welcome Thomas Fogrup. He is head of the coordination unit for the UN Institute for Training and Research's global platform for action on sustainable energy in displacement settings. And I'd like to begin, if I may, with a really quick audience poll. And again, dear audience members, you can do this live if you're in the room by using our digital tool. And if you're with us online, then you can either use our hashtag BETD22 or you can use the digital tool to answer the following question. What are the main barriers to gender equality in the energy sector? And this is a word cloud, so type in any word or words that you would like, and we'll come back and take a look at our cloud a little bit later on. So generally, I start panels with a look at challenges, but I decided to turn things around this time, and I'd like to do a quick introductory look at solutions, because all of you have ample experience in this area of trying to find good ways to address the challenge of gender equality in energy, and especially in clean energy. And so I'm going to ask that you please keep your answers, if you would, to 90 seconds or under. I know that's a big ask, but that gives us more time later on. So what, in your view, is the key the three key measures that could really begin to make a difference in dealing with this challenge. And I will start, if I may, with you, Minister Rizvanoli.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure to be here today and discuss this important issue. I think three key measures that we can take, each one of us in our countries, is improving the share of women in STEM education, and particularly in energy, promoting role models, affirmative measures to ensure that women are included in the energy sector, but also the last one, but not necessarily the least important one. In fact, maybe the most important one is that each one of us becomes aware of the unconscious biases that we have about gender and energy, about the stereotypes that we link with certain occupations, particularly in energy. And that is the first step in order for us to be able to challenge those in our everyday lives, each one of us in our capacities, professional and personal.
Thank you very much. Let me go over to Cabinet Secretary Juma, if I may. It should be on, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Happy to be on this panel. I think the three, first of all, is cultural, dealing with the cultures and the perspectives of women as consumers rather than producers of energy. For a long time, energy has been defined as a technical engineering subject and therefore not for women. So I think these perspectives are critical. Secondly, building the competencies of women to engage with the energy sector, which is technical, which is structural, and so forth. Thirdly, providing access, particularly to facilitate their effective participation, and in this case, financing. Financing that is affordable, that is flexible, that is relevant, and that is directed to the right projects.
Thank you very much. And of course, everybody's going to get an opportunity to expand on the points that you're raising, because all of them are so important. Let me go now to Sheila Oparacho.
Thank you. Please allow me to make it 4 rather than 3, but it very much aligns to what has already been said. But within Energia, we see 4 transitional pathways that we need to accelerate and that are concurrent. The first is ending energy poverty. Ending energy poverty for women by providing affordable and aspired for services, and making these services a means to reduce women's drudgery and improve their welfare. The second is ensuring women's equal participation in the energy sector, by what has already been said, being part of decision-making, but also within leadership at all levels. This also implies that women need to own wealth-creating businesses and enterprises, and I move from subsistence to wealth-creating. This also means, like you had said earlier on, that they need to have jobs. Both in renewable energy sectors, we said it's doing better, but it's only 1/3, but also very much in the conventional sector. And this is across all technologies and at all levels. The third is about energy services to support social services, such as for schools, for health centers. We're going to hear from Thomas from humanitarian settings, but also for pumping and for distributing domestic water. And certainly energy for social services has become more critical with regards to when we think about the COVID-19 context, where the care burden is disproportionately impacting women. And fourth, certainly not last, is putting the legal and policy frameworks in place that allow for the first 3 transitional pathways that we spoke of to take place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dan Dormer.
Brilliant. Thank you, Melinda. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And let me also just agree with everything that's already been said, already great points. 3 quick points from me. So I would say acknowledgement, action, and accountability. So acknowledgement, firstly, acknowledge in 2 specific ways. So first, acknowledge the problem. I think it sounds quite obvious in a room like this, but still so overlooked in many workplaces around the world. A lot of progress has been made, but as you've already said, still one of the least gender-balanced sectors. And acknowledge the opportunity. The energy sector is undergoing huge change to meet our clean energy and climate goals. This is an opportunity to also create a more diverse and balanced workforce at the same time. And frankly, when you're trying to overcome a threat to all of humanity in the form of climate change, you don't leave half of humanity on the sidelines. I mean, that's just absolutely crazy. I think we all know that. And a clean energy future needs to harness the talent of everyone, regardless of gender. On action, I mean, this whole conference is about ambition to action, and that's exactly what we need. The words of today need to transform into real change both today and tomorrow and every day thereafter. And we need to do it at very many levels. Personal and professional levels, reflecting on our own personal contributions, organisational level, and at the government level in terms of national policy and regulation. It has to be systemic, multifaceted, and ongoing. And thirdly, just quickly, that key point about accountability. We need to reflect on whether the actions that we're taking are the right ones, they're making the difference, and we course correct along the way. And that's one of the things that certainly the Clean Energy Ministerial tries to do in terms of both shining a light on the issue, bringing the data, tracking the progress, both at our ministerial meeting and throughout the year. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Just before we continue, may I ask for quiet in the back of the room, please? It's a bit distracting because there's quite a lot of echo here in the front. Gentlemen, could I ask for quiet, please, in the back of the room? Thank you. Please, Thomas Vogel.
Thanks, Melinda. And first of all, thank you to the organizers of BETD for taking this topic on sort of the next level to organize a dedicated session to this. And I only have one in comparison to Sheila, of one very practical piece of advice. Just do it, hire them. I was able to give the opportunity to 7 trainees in the last 5 years, and all of them were women. And only half of them, 3 of them, had an engineering background. They all came from different backgrounds, social sciences and all of this. And that's the beauty of the energy topic as well. It is not only a technical problem. We are talking about the right business cases. We're talking about inclusion of the communities and all of this. And here we don't need technicians. We need people with different skill sets. And that's where I think we will talk about the STEM topic later on and all of this. Go broader. And we have so many decision makers here in the room who are constantly in programs where you can hire new people in recruitment processes. If you're in doubt, go for the woman. And that's the same with many people in the audience and online. So just hire them.
Can I just ask you one, because you only gave one reason, let me give you a chance to talk a little bit about displacement settings and their effect. Because as I was thinking about this, we of course are seeing major displacement right now in Europe as a result of the war in Ukraine. And I was wondering whether displacement settings offer opportunities as well as challenges for women.
Generally more challenges than opportunities, to be honest. And if we are looking at the energy situation in displacement settings, for those who are not familiar with this term, displacement means situations with refugees, people on the move, either refugees or internally displaced people. And we see 2 large components here. One is the cooking topic, and one is more the broader electrification and decarbonization of diesel-powered infrastructure topic in this space. And obviously, when I think we're all aware of the cooking topic, it was already mentioned. But actually, my first experience and my first light bulb moment was when I visited the first refugee camp in Tanzania, and I went to the health posts and to the big hospital. And obviously the hospital in a refugee camp is not comparable to every hospital here in Europe, obviously. But there was this very proud doctor, and who happened to studied in Germany, so he was very pleased to see me, and we talked in German, and he showed me all his electrical appliances, because we were there for the energy topic, and he showed the sterilizer and the theater room and all of this. And then he showed me his statistics on the wall about the big operations. And turned out that 85% of the big operations are C-sections. So they are conducted on women and often girls. And so whether there's enough electricity to sterilize the equipment, to have light at the night, to deliver the babies, depends on or will determine the life or death of mainly women and girls. So it is the cooking topic is very important. They spend hours on collecting firewood and all of this, but equally, as Sheila already mentioned, the health topic is equally important.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very interesting. Let us take a quick look at our poll result. It's been shifting around, but it looks pretty stable now. So I'm hoping we can get it up on our big screen so that everybody can see it. Yes, there we go. So at the very center, social norms, which of course can encompass both unconscious bias, which is also mentioned separately here, but again, those kind of barriers that all of you mentioned and that Thomas Vogel also mentions when he says, just do it, just, get beyond those norms. So that's at the very center. But then a lot of overlap with some of the things that all of you have said. Somewhere on here I saw skills and qualifications. That's right, that's down in the lower half. Lack of mentoring options, lack of understanding. Again, traditional mindset, obviously part of the skills and norms. The data currently available is also here. That's an interesting one. I see a couple of you nodding, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Then reconciliation of equality and equity, very interesting. Equal access to energy, also mentioned by a number of you. Here we have patriarchal behavior of colleagues. That's also, I think, very much part of social norms and patterns. And complexity of the center. Who would like to speak to any of those points? They're studying the graph. Dan?
Yeah, so I'd just pick up on the data point, because that's certainly one that's very kind of dear to our heart in terms of the SEMS Clean Energy Education and Empowerment Initiative. One of the key parts of that was really about trying to bring it to the surface, measure it, make it transparent, so then you can track progress and evaluate your actions and how they're performing. It's improving, but it's still so far short of what we need, especially at the granular disaggregated level. We're still often quoting many of the kind of same headline level statistics, which granted, a decade ago, even some of those headline statistics were difficult to get your hands on. But to think that even just at that basic building block of understanding and fully grasping the size of the problem, there's still a long way to go alongside the solutions.
I saw Cabinet Secretary Juma also nodding at that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you know, but perhaps also what you don't know about gender participation in Kenya's energy sector, including access and workforce participation, but also other areas?
Well, I think, as has been observed, this is one of the last bastions of women's participation, and I think there has to be very deliberate action towards it. We are a little bit better because we rank about 35% of our workforce in the energy sector is women. 15% of those are in senior technical and managerial positions. The managing director and CEO of our generating company is a woman, performing perfectly, performing very well. Our utility has been having a problem, but the managing director now is a woman, the chair of the board is a woman, to push for the reform and transformation of that utility, and you are beginning to see a positive trajectory. So here, a case study that shows that women can turn around the sector. So I think there is something here in terms of just demonstrating the possibilities of this. But I think we need to focus a little bit on education and the importance of keeping girls in school, which ties with a lot of other things that we are talking here, whether it's clean cooking, so that they can use their time to be in school, whether it is electrification of school, so that they can have an extra hour for study, whether it is the school feeding programs, whether it is the sanitary pads programs, all these things tie to keep girls in school and therefore able to train to engage with the energy sector and to be a force that can be recruited into this sector. And I agree totally, it does not have to be technical. It does not have to be engineering. The MD that I'm talking about is a lawyer, and she's doing perfectly well. So we need a range of skills, actually, that can come into this sector.
And it strikes me, of course, the role model effect, not something specifically mentioned on our graph as far as I can see, but once you have a woman in a position like that, obviously that has implications for others. Let me go to Minister Rizvanoli with the same request that you talk a little bit about the structural barriers that you're seeing in Kosovo, what you know and what you don't know, whether data is also available that can help you essentially to work to bring more women in.
Yes, actually, this is a topic that we have started studying and analyzing only in recent years. What we know is that the share of women is quite low, about half of the global average of representation of women in the sector, and this clearly needs changing. Some of the structural barriers in Kosovo are the same as those faced in other countries, for women in the energy sector, I mean. There are entry barriers related to a lower rate of women studying in energy-related subjects due to gender norms. However, here I'm happy to say that there are indications that this is challenging. In energy and in related areas such as computer engineering, mechanical engineering, we are seeing a higher share of women. However, we also have great examples like an energy policy course provided by RIT Kosovo, in which 71% of women students are actually women. And I think that goes to show that perhaps also the structure of professors that are teaching, the way it is marketed, can play a positive role in attracting women into the course, into a subject that is traditionally considered a male subject. We have to call it what it is. Sometimes women face discrimination in the labor market. I've heard cases of qualified women, including some of whom I'm happy to say work in my cabinet now, who have been refused for jobs, and they were simply told in a job interview, this is more of a man's job. And knowing their qualifications and their friends, I know that they have been more qualified compared to the men because they attended a specific program that was dedicated to women being educated in the US for renewable energy courses. And there is no such program for men. So I think in this kind of sort of social experiment, it becomes clear that part of the problem that we are dealing with is just discrimination, and we need to fight that. We need to call out on the people and companies who are doing it, to raise awareness that they are doing it, and they are doing it in a very open way, which is more worrying, actually, because to actually say that means that not only are you discriminating, but you find that completely normal, and that is something that is completely unacceptable. In the workplace, when women are present in energy companies, transmission operator, regulators, sometimes, actually often we see that they are facing the glass ceiling. They are not promoted, and sometimes it is indicated that this is precisely due to their gender and due to their primary caretaking role in the family, which doesn't enable them to dedicate fully to their jobs, or that is the perception, of course. Here too, I'm happy to say that we have some improvements in women in leadership roles. Now, among board members of publicly owned enterprises, operators, and regulatory authorities in the energy sector, we have 7 out of 28 or 25% that are women. However, here too, I think we need to be aware of an issue in that these boards are selected by government and or parliament. And I would really like to see more women being promoted in their job, in their workplaces, rather than this being a top-down approach. However, I think this is a good start, and these women will be role models for others. And and what we have seen also in other areas, political representation, is that once women are given a chance, even if it's by quotas or other affirmative measures, their colleagues and peoples recognize the talent and recognize that there is no reason for women not to be. In fact, quite often they are much better, more dedicated at their jobs than men. And then they are voted, they are promoted. So I think we're on a good path here.
I see that Sheila has,
Yes,
please.
Minister, I just wanted to say there's evidence behind what you're saying. McKinsey did a study of 100 companies in the energy sector, and they showed that the companies that had women in their boards and in their leadership positions, 3-to-1 outperformed in terms of delivering to the shareholders and to the bottom line, being better companies. So they were able to deliver returns to their shareholders by having gender diversity and gender parity within their boards and within their leadership positions. So there's evidence for that conducted by some of the leading in the market, leading researchers in companies and in markets.
Let me ask you, Sheila Obaracha, to pick up also on the point about networking, because it was quite interesting that Artan Rizvanoli told us these women had been essentially part of a networking program to go to the US, learn about renewable energy, yet they come back and face pushback. So you run a network. Can you tell us what you are seeing in terms of the positive effects of networking? And do you also see your members or women who have been through the Energia network facing pushback in the same kind of way?
Yes, so I think that's, indeed, that's something that we do see, that when women enter into the workplace, the work environment is just so difficult that they end up leaving the sector. So that it's really important not only to promote women's entry into the workplace, but promote their stay, retention, and also advancement in that by changing the workplace, having workplace policies that are gender responsive. That's really important, and having leadership. So we do see key measures that support that. One, like I said, actively and intentionally trying to change the workplace environment, but also engaging men as well, and making the leaders, and most of our leaders within these companies are men, change agents. And I think, Honourable Minister, your country and your Ministry of Energy has been one of those examples where we have seen your predecessor, who was a man, the Principal Secretary who was a man, but certainly put gender in the forefront to the extent that gender is Kenya and the Ministry of Energy in Kenya is the only country that has its own standalone gender and energy policy. And I know that right now you are making efforts to decentralize that, linked to the devolution that you have in your country, to decentralize that, not just at the central level, but also at the county level. So I think leadership also shown by those that are in key position to be change agents is really very important. Mentorship, we talked about role models. Mentorship is really important. Role models are really important. And I do think also encouraging not just STEM, but certainly STEM education is really important. When I was at university, at the University of Zambia, we first entered into natural sciences. All of us had a first basic natural science, and then after that you went to specialize, whether you did medicine or engineering. There were no women allowed into engineering, and absolutely no women allowed to enter the front door of the mining. So I do think still in technical and STEM education you need to have that. Of course that's changing, but I wanted to say it's indeed we can have gender parity and gender diversity in all fields, but also technical fields is important.
I have to say, a small anecdote. When I was a PhD researcher doing work on mining in Africa, I was in Ghana at the Ashanti gold mine at that time, and was told that I couldn't go down in the mine because women bring bad luck to miners. Right. And I did go down, but essentially dressed up like a man. So, sorry, slight personal anecdote there. But let me ask Thomas, because in fact we do have men at the center of our graph here. And Sheila just talked about the need to bring men along. How, if at all, do you do that in the work that you do to try to change attitudes amongst men?
Again, for me, it comes back to role models and promoting also the good work of, in my case, for example, women cooperatives. So we are trying to I'll give you an example. Last year, in December, we organized a similar session like this one, run by refugees only. And we invited deliberately more women to this podium than men. And one of our biggest challenge, and it's coming back to your point about taking care, this caretaking role of women, actually one of the biggest challenge, which we in a way also underestimated or did not foresee, was timing. So we had a couple of, or we had one woman dialing in from Bangladesh, and the time was for the conference was foreseen in sort of European afternoon, and we were told, well, after 3 o'clock, the women have to take care of the kids and have to do the meals and everything else. And so we then changed the timing of the conference. And this is something, obviously we are also a man team, and we didn't think about this. And that was a lesson learned and sort of an education from our side. We have to be very conscious when we talk about this gender topic, when we try to promote women, we have to make sure we also do this in a way that they can respond.
Thank you very much. Dan Dorner, I mentioned role models a moment ago, and I know that, in fact, CEM's C3E campaign is designed to spotlight role models. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what impact you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, let me also just pick up on that last point briefly, if I may. Look, I think education and role models applies just as much to men as to women in this whole picture. And I've certainly had the privilege to work with many amazing women over my career in the energy sector over many years, too many maybe. And I'm currently very privileged to head a team that is 2/3 women, and they inspire and impress me every single day. And so that's just one example that I get to live and breathe, and I'm sure that many others do too, and we need to bring those into the light. Back to your question, Melinda. So since 2010, the Clean Energy Ministerials had this C3E initiative, and it's actually about to change its name to Equality and Energy Transitions to try and capture more broadly what's its kind of core aim. But it's co-led by the governments of Canada, Italy, and the US. But it's got 14 governments and many other actors participating in it besides. And while the initiative has kind of many aspects to it, many of them very much play into this issue of role models. So if I just highlight a couple, the first is we've got an ambassadors program. And we have an international cohort of women ambassadors working in the energy sector. Our current ambassadors are from Austria, China, Chile, Finland, the United States. And they do a great job at helping to attract talent and inspire the next generation of female leaders in the clean energy sector through a range of events, engagements, mentoring, those kinds of things. Secondly is the establishment, and actually it's something very dear to my heart every year in our ministerial meeting, of an international awards program. So again, we can really spotlight and showcase the really great examples of what's going on around the world and recognize and celebrate those examples and make sure that people see those inspirational examples. And the third is by organizing just a whole range of high-level events across the year, culminating in our ministerial meeting. Gender equality is always a core part. I say to our ministerial host every year, it changes from one country to another every year, you get to spotlight the particular area of clean energy that is important to you in your year, but there is one thing that we must spotlight every year, and it's gender equality, and that is a non-negotiable for us. You have to have it in every single year. And obviously, again, a very important part of raising awareness. I'm very lucky this year that we're being hosted by the United States in September. Secretary Granholm, the US Secretary of Energy, is herself a great role model and very passionate on this topic. So I know we're going to have a really great event there, and she's really, again, going to put this at the center of our ministerial meeting.
Indeed she is. I'm not sure whether it was in your last CEM meeting, but at one of the energy meetings I attended last year by Zoom, of course, her first words were, "My hair is on fire about this topic." So that was great. What you've just said brings us to another issue that I would very much like to get everybody to say a few words about, and that's international cooperation. Because, of course, a chief aim of the BETD is always to talk about how we can share experiences and work together to try to advance the goal of accelerating uptake of clean energies. So let's talk a little bit about where cooperative initiatives are particularly important in advancing gender equality. And I'd like to ask all of you to just briefly address it. I'll go straight across the panel and do also respond to what you're hearing from each other while we do that. And I'll start with Cabinet Secretary Juma, if I may.
Thank you very much, Linda. Critical because of the scale of commitment that is required and the cross-sector linkages that are required. If we are saying that this is about a just, fair, and inclusive transition, then collaboration must be within the nation, across government, across society, but beyond the country. And that is where international cooperation then becomes a critical one. In this case, the policies at the national level must align with this international commitment. So there must be national policies that are facilitating access of women in this sector, that are facilitating their effective participation. And this is where I was turning it on to questions around access to finance, the right financing frameworks, the finance that is affordable. Because we know in energy, that's where there is big money, and big money, that's where big boys are. So I think we have to create windows specifically that are targeting support for women initiatives for clean energy, for women initiatives to prospecting, for the right resources for generation, to engage in the transmission, to provide for the security of the grid systems and the distribution lines.
Do you have particular concrete examples of that you'd like to share?
Well, I think it has to be everybody. I mean, the conversations we are having here, and we have had the conversations around green hydrogen, it's big, right? But it has to cascade down to the small as well. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we are going to have women following behind the development on green hydrogen. So it has to be deliberate. And so we need to land this to where it matters, where it is with the people.
Thank you very much. Minister Ms. Van Olle?
Yes, I agree with what has already been said. I think one way to start certainly is to try and share experiences of what is working. This is a relatively new challenge that I would say globally we are embarking on. So learning from different initiatives, even if there are small ones in different countries, sharing experiences is very important. For small countries such as Kosovo, it is particularly also important to look into cooperation in the education and training sectors. Scholarship schemes, setting up TVET programs that are dedicated, either dedicated to women or make sure that women are at least equally represented, are very important here. And this is something for which we need support and cooperation with more developed countries that are more advanced in both in the energy transition as well as skills for energy transition.
How did that cooperation that you mentioned come about between women in renewables from Kosovo going over to the US to work with companies in that sector? Who was sponsoring that?
Mm-hmm. That was implemented in cooperation with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the US agency, and actually we are now working on another program on energy transition, which will have also a significant component on women's inclusion, which will include, in addition to women in skills training, will include incentives for employers to hire women and to make the workplace more women-friendly through grants, internships, or other initiatives. We are also planning in this program to pilot an award for best workplace for women in energy, and then aiming to have that either a seal label or annual award for employers in the energy sector that are friendly to women. And these are some cases where international cooperation has proven extremely important. Actually, internships for women also were initiated initially by international organizations, but particularly in this government, we are a relatively new government, and gender equality actually across the board and in all areas is one of our key priorities. And we are taking a more active role in promoting within the government to women's inclusion. And as leading by example is actually one way in which we are doing that. In my ministry, for instance, out of 7 interns that we have hired, 6 are women. In my cabinet, 3 out of 6 advisors are women. And this is to some extent intentional. However, it's definitely not discrimination of men over women here. Simply recognizing the talent and the potential that is out there, and making sure that women are not overlooked in the process.
Thank you very much. Let me go over to Sheila. Yes, and also maybe a little bit more detail about Energia itself and how you are working internationally.
Thank you. So international cooperation is important, but I think international cooperation needs to be also transformative. And for us, transformative means it needs to be multi-stakeholder. So it means that it needs to bring together governments, different institutional types, governments, civil society, private sector, and also grassroots organizations and women's organizations. And to give a concrete example, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, together with Energia and the Global Women Network for Energy Transition, have been pioneers of the multi-stakeholder Gender and Energy Compact. The Energy Compact is hosted under the High-Level Dialogue on Energy Secretariat, which was a dialogue that was convened under the General Assembly last year in September, in order to continue to build the momentum towards the SDGs. We only have got 8 years towards achieving the SDGs, and SDG 7 is amongst, on energy is amongst the 17, so we needed to achieve that. So there was a call to commitments and commitments into action, and one on a gender transformative and just and inclusive energy transition was in the Gender and Energy Compact that was launched and convenes now 50 organizations. So that's a concrete, and everyone who is here is welcome to join that. The government of Kenya is part of that, and also the Clean Energy Ministry is also part of the compact. In terms of Energia, we are an international network, and we convene 36 organizations across 18 countries in Asia and in Africa. We have been working at the intersectionality of gender equality, women's empowerment, and energy for the past 26 years, since the Beijing Platform for Action, which, as you know, called for gender mainstreaming as a means to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment in different sectors. And so we wanted to provide an institutional platform to do this for the energy sector in developing countries. I think one initiative that we're very, very proud of is our Women Economic Empowerment Program, where we support 8,000 women entrepreneurs to run businesses in what we call last mile areas. So these are areas that have almost either no or very limited access to energy, and women are driving energy markets and distribution chains in this area. And by doing so, they're bringing their wealth to their communities. And 20% is women economic empowerment, but 20% of the groups of the entrepreneurs and the enterprises are also run by men. Because I think once you start working with women, it's automatically inclusive. They just bring everybody. They bring everybody along. So, and just linking to that, I like the point that Dan made about accountability. And I think a part of accountability is financing and investing. And I didn't want us to leave this platform without saying that we need much more financing to really to scale up and to accelerate the level of investment and financing in this.
And just tell us what you think is necessary and effective to do that. Examples are welcome.
Yes, so maybe just building from what Tom said, just do it. So I think Tom was talking about, we were talking about the humanitarian, how, for instance, an example of this is how the government of the Netherlands, you said, Tom, has said 10% of their, I don't know if it's what their ODA is going to go to humanitarian settings. So
Official development assistance,
exactly.
just for the non-acronymers.
Exactly. So if we can have such targets for gender transformation, governments and companies, investors saying about 10% or even more ambitious numbers are going to go to scaling up gender equality. I think it's going to will really move the dial. I see Thomas wants to say
exactly.
something, so I'm going
Thomas,
to stop.
please, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm actually still thinking on this, on what you said, Minister, about where the big money is, the boys are. And I think there's one difference maybe, micro-lending and microcredits. And this is also maybe a very concrete example or suggestion how to bring more money for women empowering projects into the market. And for example, if you look at Kiva.org, it's one of the leading microfinancing platform. And if you talk to these colleagues, they will actually tell you they prefer giving money to women because they pay back better. They have less default rates. And so there is an incentive on this level, at least, to actually offer more financing capital to women. And if you look at, I can highly recommend this, look at Kiva.org, you see hundreds of great projects from women all over the world. For example, I don't know, looking for a solar home system to have lights at their houses, or looking for a small solar home system to power a water pump to irrigate their fields, and all of these wonderful examples where people can lend money directly to these people, and then they earn a living with this new solar technology, for example. So I can highly recommend this, and I think this is probably one of the few areas where there's also very concrete opportunity for everyone in this room to be engaged.
And Thomas, if you can just keep the mic for a second, because I wanted to ask you, since we do have a number of entries here on our poll that talk about education and skills and training and so on, to say a little bit more about UNITAR. And I know that you have essentially training programs that have customizable learning solutions. Do you have one specifically targeted at gender and energy?
Yes, so UNITAR is the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, so it's a training arm of the United Nations family, mainly directed to every external partner for the United Nations, so host countries, other international organizations, so less on internal staff. And I actually looked at this morning, and when you type in gender in our catalog, 40 different programs appear. Not all of them obviously related to gender and energy, but for example, there was one around gender and climate change and the implications for women when we talk about the climate crisis, but also one, for example, about gender and energy in trade. Also a bit of an underserved topic, and the programs we are running, they vary from 1 day up to 3 months programs, some of them online, some of them in person. So do look it up, it's interesting. And from our perspective, from the humanitarian space, what we are trying to do is now also, we have similar challenges to find women working on the energy space, but it's less challenging to find women in general working in NGOs, for example, in the field. So what we are trying to do now is to set up a program where we can actually match women working in NGOs together with companies, energy companies, and organize this in a holistic program over probably 2 years, together with also awareness-raising programs and also personal development programs as such, to promote at the end more women in our sector.
Thank you very much. I'd like to now, we have about 8 minutes left on the clock. I'd like to ask for all of you to say a few closing words and bring this back to the energy transition and boosting renewables. Because when I was looking at this area, preparing for the panel, I found myself wondering what's unique about renewable energy that could be positive for gender advancement. And the things that occurred to me were things like decentralization, local, but undoubtedly there are other aspects as well. So as you look forward, what gives you reason for optimism about the gender-energy nexus in the energy transition? Please. And of course, you can also tell us what makes you pessimistic, but I think when we talked about the challenges, we were pretty clear about where some of the barriers are. So I'm very interested also to hear that other side of it, the opportunities and what they mean. So I'll start here with Minister Viswanathan, please.
Yes, I think there's a lot of potential. When you start from such a low base, of course, there's always a lot of potential, but particularly the energy transition, I think gives a unique opportunity to sort of decouple this gender and energy occupations nexus that is there probably for no good reason. In a country such as Kosovo, which relies highly on lignite, for instance, for energy generation, I can see that the future will bring much better inclusion just by virtue of decoupling mining, which is a highly male-dominated sector, from energy generation and other aspects. The fact that renewable energy is more skill-intensive than more traditional technologies and will probably become so in the future, I think also gives more possibilities for women and will be another reason to be optimistic for women's inclusion. These are just one of the few aspects apart from a general level of awareness that is much higher now compared to what it has been previously.
Thank you very much. And I'll go over to Cabinet Secretary Juma.
Thank you very much, and I agree with the Minister. But I think the first thing is framing this matter, how we frame it. It is very important that if we are looking for a just and fair transition that provides freedom, then we must see renewables as an avenue for this freedom, because it has a multiplier effect across many capabilities of women. Electrification, rural electrification, for example, by renewables, provides women with more time to be productive, provides better health, provides their children with opportunities for better education and for them to be more productive in the future. So there is no doubt that women are easier in adapting this transition. So it is really an offer for their freedom. And I think framing this must be taken in these terms. Secondly, if we agree that diverse workforces are stronger and more effective, then this issue about gender equality and gender involvement becomes a business imperative. I think we need to frame it as a business imperative, and so that the investors see the opportunity for growing their business through this gender equality. Thirdly, leadership matters. Leadership matters. We have to be models, and I think it is very good that even male leaders are becoming champions. Certainly my president is a champion, and we think President Uhuru is a feminist. But I think that imposes an obligation, a duty of care for those of us that are in leadership in the energy sector to be models and to do very specific targeted actions that promote women and girls in this sector. Finally, policies matter. They are critical. They have to be targeted policy. There has to be alignment from the local to the national to the international. Now, we can have policies, but we need to land them. In the case of our country, 30% of procurement is preserved for women and girls and youth. But if they are not facilitated, then they cannot access that opportunity. And that is the linkage in terms of collaboration, in terms of facilitation, in terms of creating sensitive frameworks for access, particularly for finance, particularly for rules and regulations, particularly for support and for support for the women. And this, of course, leads to accountability. There must be a way in which we can look back and say, how well are we doing, and what can we correct as we move towards this path?
Thank you very much. Sheila Oparacho.
I don't know what's left to be said. I think our honorable ministers have said it all. But indeed, I think renewable energy does have a means of, it should be central to adjusting, it is essential to adjust an inclusive energy transition because of what you have said. It's the type of, the energy that it is makes it applicable to areas that do not have access to energy and being able to drive energy in that way. And we've seen countries that have accelerated either their electrification rates by having this integrated approach of both the grid and decentralized energy. And decentralized energy can also feed into centralized energy, so that's one. But I fully agree that it's how it's positioned, it's the narrative and how it's positioned. I think local ownership is really important. Unfortunately, still the major renewable energy countries are outside the continent of Africa. So I think driving that local ownership and driving that local ownership that in a way that promotes women's businesses is going to be central. Minister, I think it's not just the policies, but I think it's also the political narrative. I'm very happy that you spoke about His Excellency Kenyatta, who was in his first, at the high-level dialogue on energy, in the first 3 minutes, talked about cooking energy being really, really important and being important to women's energy needs. So I think it's changing that. I think it's who you bring to the table. Most of the times it's either the minister or it's myself who are the only women, and I'm usually in these meetings with Thomas and with Dan. You have one gender expert at the table. I think we need to be bringing much more women to the table, to decision-making tables. It's not the lone gender expert or the lone Sheila who should be there. And I think these tables need to be extended to women from the grassroots. Their voices need to be heard as well. So we're going to be having the Sustainable Energy for All Forum in May in Kigali. I'm really looking to see, together with our ministers there, a very strong delegation of our women grassroots women's there. And like I said, it's also about money, us following the money and really bringing investments and money into the sector. Thank you. And just the last call for everyone to join the Gender and Energy Compact. If you go to the website, Gender and Energy Compact, it's there and it will show you how to join. Join the movement for a gender transformative, a just and inclusive energy transition. Thank you.
You heard it, dear audience. Go there and sign up. So Dan Dorner, please.
Brilliant, thank you. So I think it has largely already been said. I think just I'd highlight something very quickly, which is we are absolutely seeing within our overall work programme and our community that gender equality as part of the clean energy transition is absolutely not an afterthought. It's integral to seeing how the transition is going to develop. We see that both in the initiative that I've talked about, and we've talked a lot about ongoing learning, sharing of experiences, figuring out and sharing what works, building that supportive community. But also there's a related campaign called Equal by 30, which has established a commitment to work towards equal pay, equal leadership, and equal opportunities for women in the clean energy sector by 2030. And I'm thrilled that it's been one of our most successful campaigns across our whole work programme. We've got not just governments at national or at regional level, but companies and organisations of all types all over the world signing up to that commitment, working through using our toolkit to figure out their own action plans to help make it a reality. But of course, we can always and do want more. So if anyone wants to now, inspired by this discussion today, go on to www.equalby30.org, make that commitment, look at that toolkit, absolutely do it today. Thanks.
Thanks again. Thomas Vogelgrup, please.
What makes me optimistic, and it's building off what Sheila and our colleague from Kenya said, when you look at decentralized renewable solutions and cooking, the clients are women. So that's where the money is, and that's where also often the decision power in the household is. So that makes me optimistic that in the future we see more women in this space, and hopefully in 10 years we shouldn't have sessions like this again.
We'll see about that. Thank you so much to all of you for this really fascinating and also inspiring discussion. I think it's given all of us a lot to not only think about, but to do. So I really appreciate your being part of it. And let's give them a warm round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.